Good evening. My name is Scott Warner. I'm president and program chair for the Culinary Historians of Chicago. And right now I'm in Wisconsin. So um, we just bought a home. My partner Liz and I just bought a home in Wisconsin. So if the background doesn't look Chicago-ish, that's what it is. I'll be back and forth between Chicago and Wisconsin. So our guest tonight is one of Chicago's most celebrated, substantial chefs, one of our most savory chefs, Jason Hammel. He has a buffet of things to talk to us about tonight. A lot of food for thought that he's going to give. And I'll give you a little bit about his background. He's the executive chef and owner of Lula Café in Chicago. Jason is 25 years old now, right?
It is, yes.
Great. And this Logan Square eatery is known for its seasonal cuisine. And his debut cookbook, the Lula Cafe Cookbook, is that showing up okay? Because I can't see my screen right at this moment. But the Lula
Yes.
Cafe Cookbook, collected recipes and stories, was published last year in 2024. Jason grew up in New Haven, Connecticut. He wanted to be a writer, not a chef, and he is a writer and a chef now. And after graduating in 1994 with a degree in English, Jason traveled to Italy, where he happened to stay across the street from Florence's Central Market. And he had an epiphany, and he said, "I want to be a chef." And he dedicated his chefdom to seasonality. And in 2017, the Museum of Contemporary Art in Chicago named Chef Hammel as executive chef, culinary creator for the museum's new restaurant, Marisol. Um, Jason was named the Jean Banchet 2019 Chef of the Year. And in 2024, last year, Lula Cafe was awarded for the James Beard Award for Outstanding Hospitality. Today, Jason divides his time between Lula, Marisol, and his nonprofit food education group, Pilot Light, which he co-founded in 2010. He's going to tell us about that and a lot of other things too. So sit back and let's imbibe on everything that Jason has to tell us. Welcome, Jason.
Thank you. Thanks for inviting me here. I am in the glorious, fancy basement prep area of Lula Cafe. And you're going to hear some people move through the space and yell corner and behind you, etc., as we are in service. I am always at work. And unless I'm doing an event or something. So it's natural for me to be here talking to you from the restaurant. I am going to give you a little life story and talk to you about my experience coming here to Chicago as an outsider and what Chicago has meant to me as a chef, the life it's become for me as a chef. And I'm going to leave a lot of time open for questions and answers toward the end so that the conversation can go in whatever direction you all feel it should go. Um, I think the best place to start is to give you a little quick synopsis of my life story here becoming a chef. Scott alluded to the history, but it bears diving in a little bit. So I'm from New Haven, and I'm from an Italian family. Um, I grew up down the street from my grandparents. My aunt lived a couple doors down. We spent Sundays together eating. It's a very typical like Italian American story from the East Coast, and I realize, looking back, that there was a lot of food life in my early childhood that I, frankly didn't pay a ton of attention to. I wanted to be an artist. I wanted to be a writer. I wanted to be a musician, whatever I could do to express myself. I ended up really focusing on fiction writing and went to school um, for fiction specifically. I studied at Brown with some really avant-garde writers of the early 90s, and they sent me to graduate school in Illinois. So I moved out here specifically to go to graduate school at Illinois State University, where David Foster Wallace was teaching in the 90s before he became the celebrated author that we know of now. He had yet to publish Infinite Jest. He was um, much less known than he is now. I studied with him for a few years and moved to Chicago, hoping to write some sort of like gritty and intensely personal novel about being young in an American urban setting, which sounds like the most boring thing you've probably ever heard of. And I did work on that. And during that time, I, asked a friend what they did for money, because I had been constantly broke. And he's like, I work at a restaurant. Come on in, you can work there too. So I started cooking in the 90s in graduate school. I worked at really um, high level, notable establishments of Normal, Illinois, such as TGI Fridays and a basically an off-brand Sonoma pizza, like a California pizza kitchen, off-brand one that is no longer in business. And learned to work in an intense and busy environment. After that, moved to Chicago. And the story is this, and I'll tell it quickly. It's a much longer versions in my book. And you can read about it there. They were very gracious, gave me lots of space to talk about myself. But my story is that I moved to Chicago in the 90s, and I was told by a friend that Logan Square was like a great neighborhood for a young wannabe writer. It had the cheap rents, the sort of like interesting, colorful neighborhood full of cafes and bars and places to walk, and just like it's a great neighborhood to live in if you're an artist. So I came to Logan and moved into an apartment just down the street, and if you can believe it, it was 325, one bedroom, heat included. And on the very first day, I walked down to a cafe down on Kedzie, and I was with my girlfriend at the time, and we went in and sat down, and it was the classic 90s bohemian cafe full of smoke, and there are posters on the walls, like, for punk bands at the Fireside Bowl, and to get, your Chakra Red or whatever, and for misconnections, all those kinds of things. Um, and we sat down in this really great spot up in the window, and my girlfriend, whose name was Leah, saw that there was a soup listed on the menu as Leah's amazing soup. So she thought she should order it since it was her name. And she did. It was a beautiful, like sweet and sour cabbage soup, really gently but interestingly spiced, deliciously balanced soup. And I soon found that the woman who made that soup her name was also Leah. Obviously, it's her soup. Um, it was Leah Childs, who I am now married to. And in that moment, we were sitting in the window of what would become Lula Café on my very first day in Chicago with my soon-to-be ex-girlfriend meeting my future wife. So that was my first day in the city. Um, what happened was, and this is important to the story about food, chefs, and community in Chicago. What happened was I spent a lot of time at that cafe. I was writing, I was working as a cook at night on Common Ground, and spent every day at the cafe. And it was there that I met all of the musicians, artists, filmmakers, painters, other writers, movie directors. There was just an incredible group of people who were gathering at that cafe. It was called Logan Beach. It was the central like meeting place, the central third place of Logan Square, and it was my everything. I was an outsider. I did not know the city. I, had no, obviously there was no internet. So there's the way that you found people and things to do was to gather together and talk. And that cafe was incredibly vibrant. They had a great art program. They had music almost every night of the week. There were, it was it felt like what I imagine Greenwich Village in the 60s would feel like. And then the cafe closed. And the group of us that were so connected to that cafe were destroyed. And by that point, Leah Childs and I had become friends. Or we decided that we didn't want this community to stop having a place to be together. And through the good graces and like kindness of the original owner, who had had to close the cafe to take care of ailing parents, we were allowed to basically enter the space and make it our own. We maxed out a couple of credit cards and got some furniture at a pool hall that had gone out of business and thrifted plates. We had a stove from like a home stove with 4 burners and a home refrigerator like you might have in your garage for your beer. And that's all we had. And we reopened the space as Lula Cafe in September of 1999. And at the time, I had experience as a cook at Uncommon Ground and at those aforementioned, bastions of culinary excellence like TGI Fridays, but I had never wanted to be a chef. I had never even considered it. The time that I did spend in Italy and during my college years, I took some time off from college and went there. I did actually live across the farm from the farmer's market, and I did get interested in food, but I was interested in it from a like I wanted to write about it. I wanted to write about the food that was in in the traditions of my family as a way of like attaching something to myself for my fiction, and never considered it as a major like career move until I actually owned a restaurant. So at the point that I owned a restaurant, I was like, oh, I could take my fascination that I had with the food of my family and begin there. And that's where both Leah and I began. And in the early days, we were cooking those dishes and kind of like your classic 90s cafe stuff. And then, black bean soups and quesadillas, etc. And then the farmers market opened up in Chicago, specifically the Green City market. And the story goes that we were open for a couple of months, and a chef named Kelly Courtney, who was Food and Wine Best New Chef in the early aughts. Um, she started coming to the cafe, have coffee, and sort of hang out. And I didn't know any chefs. I didn't even think of myself as one. And she invited me to the farmers market, and took me there, and led me around and introduced me to some key figures that I'll talk about in a second. Um, and when we came back, I was just fascinated with the people that we had met. And she asked me if I had ever read the cookbooks of Alice Waters. And she didn't say cookbook, she said if I had ever read the books of Alice Waters. And in that moment, I thought she was talking to me about Alice Walker. And I said, yeah, I've read The Color Purple and some of her essays and other things. This is how far detached I was from the farm to table tradition in the United States. But what happened is that basically I got obsessed. Um, the farmers market opened a door for me that has never closed. So it was really meeting Greg Gunthorpe, who is a pork producer from Indiana. Um, Meeting him and one of his colleagues who is no longer bringing uh, meat into the city, but was from a place called Swan Creek. And then also the Klugs from Michigan, and Green Acres Farm, which is no longer open, but was at the market. Meeting those people that even just that first day, but that first year, it completely changed my life because what happened was um, it brought narrative and depth to the experience of being in business. I was never intending to be a business person. Like I didn't think about like buying things and selling them. We were just creating a space for friends, creating a space in which to gather. And the business sort of like came as an accident. And to be honest, like once it started, I don't I don't know that I would have been able to continue if it hadn't become so like deeply personal and full of like really amazing stories. So the stories were at first the people that I met. Um, the people being like Greg Gunthorpe and his very like unusual and brilliant quirky delivery driver whose name was Patrick, and I tell stories about him in the book. And meeting these people and having conversations and understanding like what their lives were, at least in part, like learning about the way that they thought about their work in the field or with their animals. I have found that stuff completely fascinating and certainly latched on to the idea that the narrative in food is the part that makes the cooking more transformative and meaningful in your life. Like the idea being that the experience of me meeting Greg and like helping him bring these like giant buckets of, pork shoulder into the restaurant and then putting them in the cooler. And then the next morning, like opening them up and starting to confit them for a dish on the brunch menu at Lula. Like if I had just bought those, that pork from, whatever um, broadline distributor or commodity distributor, they would have shown up, they might not have felt that different, but I was feeling something like profoundly different in the experience. I mean, it's like, don't waste it. Someone worked hard for it. But it's was more than that. It was understanding that I had had a connection to this person, like that I was part of the chain and recognizing the not only the responsibility of being one of those, links in the chain, but also just the profound I don't know, just this sort of like profound meaning of it, the resonance of it, of being something that connected people together. I really got invested. And it wasn't just, it soon became like, okay, it's not just about like the individuals that I meet, but it's also the stories of the ingredients themselves, the ideas behind their names, why is, the some vegetables have names as creative as like lipstick flavors. I mean, it's very fascinating, like how they come to the idea that the vegetables they have histories, breeding histories, and reasons why they've come into being. Sometimes, like the curious thing that different vegetables will do, the way that garlic will sort of walk across the earth, or the difficulty that it takes it required to open a black walnut, and the black walnuts that we got that were um, brought to us by a couple of sort of like arthritic old ladies who were using their black walnut, small black walnut business as a way of combating that arthritis in their hands. To just like the crazy stories about, like waiting till 2, 3 in the morning for a farmer to get to you because, um, they had a flat or something and just like sitting in the alley in Chicago, a city you never intended on ever living in, and finding yourself being a chef in the alley waiting for this person. Like that story of like waiting and talking to them became like deeply resonant in my life. So that is like how my farm to table, experience began. It just so happened to be 1999, 2000, and the market had opened and people started to get more and more interested in the roots of, you know, and digging into the roots of where their food came from, and very dissatisfied in the monoculture of, the grocery store experience. And frankly, the years from 2000 to 2010, maybe even 15, were glory years for that movement. What happened was we were connected with just scores of farms in the Midwest, farms that didn't know that anyone was interested in their product at first. You know, you'd be calling up people and they were perhaps growing something on the side that they were growing for their own consumption, that they were willing to sell. I mean, right now it's ramp season, and just the history of the way that ramps have been consumed in the Chicagoland restaurant industry, you know, in the last 20 years is funny. I mean, when ramps first came out, I think they were like 2.95 a pound, and nobody wanted them, and they just came in big, dirty garbage bags dropped off from a farmer who had a spot next to him, and asked if he wanted these things. I even remember in 1999 someone telling me about ramps and me having to look them up because I didn't even know what one was. And you know, flash forward to today where we're getting emails from specialty purveyors who sell Iberico ham and truffles and caviar and ramps at over $20 a pound. The change in the way that these products are commodified is has been dramatic. But in those years in the aughts, it was an explosion, especially in particular from Wisconsin and Michigan. The fruit purveyors in Michigan really started to notice that Chicago was hungry for blueberries and plums and peaches, cherries, and those farms really their popularity and their success really exploded. And in Wisconsin, there was something called Homegrown Wisconsin, which was a consortium of small farms that collaborated to deliver to Chicago. And that was also a golden era of products, the diversity of which um, we have actually moved away from over the last since the pandemic. So it was a great scene. To be honest, I felt at those times that we were telling people about a way of thinking, a way of being, a way of interacting with their food that they they hadn't thought of. We were promoting it. A lot of chefs in Chicago were listing, you know, these products come from these farms. And I remember writing on the menu for years, like we go to the Green City Market and, you know, twice a week, and this is where we buy everything. As a like to tell people like this is what it's about. And we, you know, even in the beginning, I remember we weren't able to get enough organic eggs in the beginning, so we would buy some and offer both for different prices. So to see, you know, if people would want the organic eggs, and people would ask us like, well, what's the difference? Like, why, you know, why should we choose this? So there was a lot of like, you know, sort of telling our story and telling the story of being a farm to table restaurant. And then at the time, like you could not find, you know, golden beets or um, lacinato kale. You could not at a grocery store. You would not be able to find organic meats by any stretch at a grocery store. There weren't grocery stores in the Chicagoland area that were, you know, selling the dried product, the you know the beans from and farro and other things that people are wheat berries that people are growing here in the Midwest. So you had to go to a restaurant to get these ingredients. And I do I do note that today increasingly that is not the case. What what is noted now is that it is not as rare to find organic ingredients in most grocery stores. Um, and it is not rare to find the specialty ingredients like black kale or you know candy striped beets or I don't know maitake mushrooms. Those are all available at any Whole Foods and certainly at Mariano's and some other places as well. So it's become increasingly less special to buy those ingredients and serve them. Even Slagle Farm, which is a purveyor that we have been used, they just dropped off a few minutes ago. For years is selling to grocery stores currently in like Agora Market. So there's definitely a different um, perspective that has, if you look at the whole scope of the period that I've been a chef in my restaurant, where I've seen the beginning of the market, which was, I think the market opened in 98, to its like what I consider its golden years, to today. It certainly continues to be a very busy. I mean, I'm not just talking about Green City. There are other markets in Chicagoland area, including one right outside the door here in Logan Square that is very, very popular and very busy. The markets are increasingly about prepared foods, and the diversity of products is frankly less than it's less diverse than it was in the years 08, 010, 10, 12, those years. Also interestingly, in that time, there became very um, there developed like a very clear and tight group of folks that were committed to this kind of purchasing, and a group of chefs that were at the market every Wednesday and Saturday. There are, sometimes there were fights for parking, but we all would see each other and happily talk about like, sharing ideas, sharing stories, just sharing the camaraderie of the experience of buying things in person. I would say in um, the years that I was shopping for the market twice a week, I did not miss a single market, and filled my truck regularly, as did 10, 15, 20 other chefs. And again, what's transpired, especially since the pandemic, is a different kind of economy. There are many more places that are selling local, sustainable, organic, whichever you know definer you want to use, products through other means, like through Cisco, through Regalis. These are larger companies that have sort of taken over that market and made it easier and more efficient for chefs. I've always felt that the more difficult it is to find and connect with a particular farmer, typically that means the quality of the product goes up. So I wanted to share like a couple of things about um, that experience with connecting with farmers that really does matter. I have a favorite at the Green City Market, I'm not shy to say, among many of the ones that I love there. And it's Jerry from Froggy Meadow Farm. I have had the pleasure of working with Jerry for several years, and we are a very busy restaurant. So when we work with a farmer, we need to agree to supply us with a certain amount of something. There are restaurants that are very um, expensive and rarefied that can typically purchase, maybe 10 or 20 pounds of something. But when Lula buys something, it's in the hundreds of pounds at a time. And Jerry is a small farmer, and very committed to quality, and also just an enigmatic, curious, philosophically just deep and brilliant man. I love speaking to him. And I know that Jerry will have absolutely nothing to sell Lula for weeks and weeks until the weather really changes and we get close to tomato season, when he supplies us with almost all the sun golds that we use in the summer. But there's a great story about Jerry that I wanted to share, and it kind of highlights the community community connections that the Green City Market has done great in fostering. And while I bemoan the sort of like loss of diversity of product and like the commitment from chefs to go to the market and in person, this this community is still very much alive and well and part of our lives. And it's very much in my mind that I'm committed to protecting it. So this was I guess it's now 2 years, but I went to the Green City Market on a busy summer morning. I typically go at 6:30. I think it opens at 7. And try to get in and out before the crowds come. But that morning, actually, there was I think maybe a marathon on the lake shore, and it was some kind of running event. It was very busy and very hard to find any kind of parking. And I remember getting frustrated and driving around and finally finding a space and going up to Jerry and saying like, it's tough because I want to love coming here, but it's becoming harder and harder. And we shared some, complaints and he started showing me some of the things that he was growing. In particular, this eggplant that he was really excited about. And then he confided in me that, he thought maybe this was going to be his last season growing because his farm was running out of water. And he explained that the farms around him, which were commodity growers of corn and soy, um, were allowed to dig wells deeper than he was, in part because of their designation for the type of business they were in their county or state. And they were basically digging down into the aquifer and just like sucking up every ounce of water that was around. And he was running dry, and he said this might just be it. Like the large farms around me have basically made um, my land arid, and I'm just, sort of frustrated and competing in this arena. And I'm like, well, Jerry, it's would be so sad in the middle of the season. He's like, yeah, I know, but I would have to dig a different kind of well. My well is not working. I'd have to dig down, and I don't have that kind of money. And so I heard the story, and it was a sad story. And so I walked away, and I called John Shields from Smith Restaurant, who is one of the chefs that you see in at the market every morning, and told him the story. And then texted Oliver Olivet from Le Bouchon and Obelix, and he had heard the story. And then it went to Carrie and Sarah from the market, Sarah Stegner. And before you know it, maybe even by a matter of couple of days, there was a GoFundMe with enough money to dig a new well for Jerry, and he not only survived but thrived in the next season. Um, and what that moment taught me was that the farm to table movement that that I became a part of in the last 25 years, the roots are so deep that and so worth protecting that um, people all over will come out and support um, growers, producers that they consider friends. And the friendships come from the interactions you get in person. And it was a really profound lesson because this is happening post-pandemic when so many of our interactions were removed one person. And like here I am talking to myself in a camera. I can't see any of you, so I don't I don't know what your reactions are, but my interactions with people daily are the building blocks of the narrative that develops over time. And it's only through the years of meeting with Jerry that we were close enough for him to share that story, and for all of the people who he's shared similar stories with to back him and come in and say that he was worth saving. So that's something that happened recently that's really made me feel profoundly hopeful for the future. I have had the fear that like some of the work that was done in the late 90s, in the 90s and in aughts around building agricultural systems of connections between local agriculture and Chicagoland restaurant industry um, haven't been themselves watered, taken care of, nurtured, and that they're under duress. And I think it's more important than ever that we celebrate the smallest and most deeply connected relationships that we can. So I can remain to be very committed to working with Jerry and several other farms. The Frillmans are great at Green City. And I really love the Klubs as well, who grow fruit in Benton Harbor, Michigan, and have been coming to the Green City market for many years. There are a lot of new small producers there that are interesting. They're not as ready to sell to restaurants. But I also do my personal shopping there on Saturdays when I'm picking up the big bulky stuff, and I'm finding really passionate people. So I wanted to portray a picture of like what it was like to get involved in this scene. Um, my book tells a lot of stories about individual connections with individual people, and there are many. Um, there are the Werps from northern Michigan who grow in greenhouses for restaurants and just restaurants, and drive down on Thursday nights from a location that's much closer to the Canadian border than to Chicago, within vans full of fresh lettuces. And there's Tracy from Three Sisters Garden who grows brilliantly. We buy overwintered spinach from her. And we're doing that right now. And overwintered spinach is like itself like an exceptional product that I learned about in, only, in being a chef. And it's plants that have, lasted through the cold and then have regenerated in the spring and are in hoop houses. And they have like this incredible um, sweetness that only comes through the difficulty of their surviving the winter. And there's many instances in which the best products are ones that have suffered a little bit, that have had duress. Jerry and I talk about this all the time and Jerry's tomatoes, by the way, are the best tomatoes in my opinion, in the market. And he doesn't water them after their sort of initial phases, and believes that and really takes care to find the best individual products. He's told me that he would be fine just growing one tomato in that year if it was the tomato that he wanted to grow. That it's not about like how much and what kind of yield he can get. Um, and I think a lot about that when, my restaurant over the last 25 years has grown from being a small spot with just a few employees to being what it is now. It's a big operation. And I think a lot about like the intentionality, the deep, commitment to care and conscious attention that one needs to do a good job, and whether or not I can maintain that attention as things grow. Um, so moving on just quickly from that, I wanted to highlight that this community, the chef community in Chicago that was connected to the market, um, has produced some really remarkable relationships over the years. We're very deeply close, the group of Chicago chefs that sort of came up together in this era. Um, I've traveled a lot and done a lot of events in other cities, and I can tell you that the Chicago chef community is uniquely harmonious, uniquely I don't know, compatible or um, friendly, kind to each other. As an outsider, I've had to ask many a question of friends, and they've all always been extremely giving and kind in terms of sharing information. I mean, I don't know what I'm doing. I never worked any other job besides any other restaurant job, besides TGI Fridays and this one. So there's always these funny stories about like me not knowing things. Like I didn't know for a long time that you could hire someone to clean your grease trap. I was cleaning it out myself, which is a literally disgusting job. And then Paul Kahn was like, you can just call somebody and they'll come with a vacuum and suck it out. So I learned that the hard way. But what I'm saying about this community is that it has come together on numerous occasions, and specifically was very noticeable in its response to the pandemic, um, and how we maintained but like deepened those connections and actually produced some like really interesting results, and also the sort of charitable organizations that have formed out of that community. And the one I'm going to highlight is my own because that's what I'm here to do, which is called Pilot Light Chefs. It was started, let's see, 2010, by me, Paul Kahn, and Matthias Mergis. But there were other chefs in the beginning of in those years that were helping us. And what we did was basically we took over a CPS school on the north side and entered in classrooms and brought food with us. But and in those moments we collaborated with teachers on the lessons that they were teaching that day in the school. So we picked a particular day of the year and figured out what everybody was doing in their classrooms. It could be a class on the Boston Tea Party. It could be a class on the difference between grams and ounces. It could be a class on how to write similes and metaphors. And we got chefs to show up and do food lessons that were connected to those topics. And it was an incredible success. It was super fun and really profoundly engaging for the students. And Paul Matthias and I continued that work and eventually started a foundation, which helps teachers and chefs collaborate on creating curriculum for schools now across the country. We are in, I want to say, 21 states. Might be exaggerating that by a few, but we're very close to that. And so we have teachers all over the country who are working with chefs all over the country to bring food in their classrooms. It's not a program that teaches you necessarily how to cook but it teaches you how to ask questions about how food connects us to our world, and how food has a profound ability to engage students in their learning, to help them ask critical questions and to truly like level the playing field in terms of kids' aptitudes, abilities in a classroom. So that program has done really great. I could talk about it for hours. We have several facets of it, but it is out there and operating all over the country. Um, so, I mean, I've babbled on about, the history of the farm table movement as I'd seen it. I had the pleasure of interviewing Rick Bayless for a series that I've been doing because I had come to Rick with the question of like, Rick, we're getting older. Like Rick, Rick's a little bit older than me, but not a lot. And I'm looking back at the 25 years that I've had the restaurant and asked myself, am I leaving the am I leaving it better? Like if I made improvements in the way that people think about where their food comes from, how to eat, how to think about food, how to create food. I mean, there's many ways of thinking about my role as a chef, and most of my most memorable and like meaningful experiences have been from mentoring folks. And Rick and I share that passion, but I have more pessimism than Rick does, I think sometimes. And I have my concerns that, folks have become sort of habitual, like the idea of like a local product or something that's grown with care and love has been devalued in recent years. And I'm concerned about that. And Rick's take was very different than mine. He thought a lot about where we were in the 90s before I came onto the scene. And in the 80s when restaurants did not have any access to this kind of product and certainly um, struggled to I don't know, just to express themselves in the way that we can now. And that we should be proud of the progress that we've made and the direction we're headed. And I took that conversation to heart. Like I recognize that sometimes that I can be like I'm a critical person. I like to find fault, especially in the stuff that I'm doing. So it's true that it's a challenge now to maintain the level of care and concern that we have for where we buy our products as an industry. Um, in particular, because the post-pandemic world has made the economic realities of running a restaurant very difficult. Um, I may know that profit margins in our business have always been razor thin. The pandemic changed that for the worse, and have made many people have to make tough choices. And those tough choices are sometimes about pay raises for employees and medical care, and the difference between a locally sourced bunch of organic grapes or, peaches and ones that you can get in a box from somewhere that's cheaper. These are choices that we've all had to make and to look at, you know, with a hard eye, and they're just frankly not getting much better. The new situation around increased costs you're gonna have to forgive the noise for a second that someone's filling eyes, but the increased costs associated with importing ingredients that we really care about, like Parmesan and etc., is going to make these choices even more difficult. And this is why I entered into that conversation with Rick with a degree of pessimism. Um, and it was a pessimism that he managed to temper in me and left me with a deeper commitment to pursue as best I can the course that I've been riding on, since 1999. I think I'll stop there. I said a lot of things. I hope it was somewhat interesting, and I'd be happy to. Do I answer the questions out of the chat?
Okay, Jason, I'm going to start off asking non-chat questions, live questions from you. When we were talking before the program, um, well, two things I'm going to ask, and Kathy wanted to know too. You have some relationship or views on the show The Bear, and
Everybody asked me about the bear. Yeah,
and
I'll be happy to comment on the bear.
and I think after the questions, you were going to take us on a little,
Oh,
which
I can
we've
take you
never.
around, yeah, if you want to see what it looks like here.
Yeah, we've never
Um,
done this before, so this is
okay,
unprecedented in
sure,
our history.
unprecedented. I mean,
Yes.
listen, this is a very much a working kitchen. It's not super fancy, so don't get the wrong idea. Um, you can see this by just the conditions in the basement. I spend a lot of time in a basement. Maybe 75% of my work, my time here is down here, either prepping or like, doing organizing, etc. Um, oh, the bear. So everybody wants to know what I think about the bear. I have had the privilege of knowing the creators of the bear in other capacities. Especially Courtney, who is so it's Chris and Courtney Store, who are the creators of the bear. Chris is Courtney is his sister, who is a chef from LA, who is a friend of mine, who I've known for some time, and is a truly remarkable person. And she has invited me down on the set a couple times to help out and talk about the show. And for me, yes, was occasionally triggered by some of the episodes. I am also from an Italian family that did Feast of the Seven Fishes, but it never ended up in a drunken mess. But it did strike a real deep nerve in me, that episode, as did the episode in which they forget to turn off the online ordering mechanism on their new POS system, and it shoots out orders. I actually had the very same experience on Mother's Day during the pandemic when we were closed for in-person dining, and had a error in the talk reservation system for our brunch Mother's Day box special, um, allow thousands of, well, maybe it might not have been thousands, but it was over 1,000 orders to come through when we were only intending on doing 300 or 400. And I was the person with the ticket machine spitting out, so, frantically way down onto the floor, and a line of people coming at the door, and only two people in the kitchen. I have always wanted to be the type of artist who could tell a story, that that made someone shake in the knees and feel something. And so I respect any kind of narrative that can even bring a chef like me who's had the real experience back to a place, however dark and dangerous it was in their mind, to relive it. Even, and a lot of my friends are like, I don't want to think about that. It's too much. I live it every day. Why do I have to watch? But I think it's good that other people are seeing what a restaurant kitchen can be like. And yes, it's glamorized. No, you can't take the L and get off and go to a vac. We know that. Like, I know there's like some fantasy involved in that. And I don't mind. I don't care that they break, some minor Chicago rules. So what do you want to do? Do you want me to answer questions or take you on a little tour?
Kathy, you decide how you want, which comes first.
I think we take the tour because if we
Okay.
never have all the questions, the tour will at least keep us well informed.
Okay, so we're in the basement. I'm going to take my laptop and take you around. So this basement, this was once a 100-year-old cigar shop. So when we came in, it was floor to ceiling with cigars. I don't smoke, so that was too bad. We have two walk-in coolers. This is one of them. The ceiling height, I am not a tall person, and you can see I'm almost touching here. So when you work at Lula, you have to duck everywhere. If you can imagine that. And then this is what a walk-in cooler will look like. You have all your products there. And some white asparagus, these mushrooms. Let's see if I can do it. These mushrooms are from, I mean, come out of here, are from 4 Star. We've been using 4 Star mushrooms in Chicago a lot lately. They're a local grower. People are walking around. So this is our main prep area here. Spices behind me. This is in the basement. They are mopping, and another person is butchering a bunch of Slagle Farm chickens that just came in over there. And then we've got more mushrooms. Hello. They just got grilled and they're getting brought upstairs. Those are lion's mane mushrooms for a vegetarian tasting menu. This is, let's see what this says. It says AM Copa, please pull 10 p.m. So that is from a pig that we just got in from Kilgus Farm. We had a great session last week with a chef who visited us from the Chicago Meat Collective and butchered a whole pig with us in front of the staff so that we could teach them what to do. It was fascinating also because she was almost 9 months pregnant, and McCullough, she's an amazing chef, friends for a long time. So my team is taking that pig and then figuring out what to do with all its various parts. So we put a special on brunch, we'll do something at dinner. And that's what's happening there. They're testing Copa because the first test, honestly, I didn't approve it. So this is our employee wall. See all the people on the employee wall. When it's someone's birthday, they get a card. And then you have to come up these stairs, which is dangerous. Dining room. Wave. So they're in service right now. Back here, this is the pastry kitchen. This is very unorthodox. Okay, I gotta go. I'm gonna go back downstairs because too busy up here. That's basically the lay of the land of Lula. So let's go back to the questions.
Yeah, Kathy, you want to, oh, by the way, it- I, it was a very delicious look at your place. And again, we've never done this before. This is wonderful. Look inside the heart and
Goofy
soul.
at that, yeah. You
And
can see it's not particularly fancy.
fancy, but you really get booked with reservations. I know because I tried to get one and it's you book way in advance. So it was nice to see the people who took my seats in the restaurant. But
There they
anyway,
are.
uh, Kathy, you want to go ahead?
From Joel Smith, where do you get your ideas for the
Hi,
unique
Joel.
creative? I figured you do. Where do you get your ideas for the unique creativity of the dishes on the Lula menu?
So the way that dishes go on the menu now is like this. Almost every week we're working on some new dishes. So I have a team of 7 managers that are in the back of in the kitchen there. In the kitchen, I have other managers for the front. So we have sous chefs, chef de cuisine, a chef. We have people who are creative, engaged individuals. They come to the table with ideas, and we basically collage the ideas. Or I'm sorry, I do that. So they'll come to me with ingredients, pairings, like an idea for like how something might be formed. I always ask them to give me like 3 to 5 ideas because as a creative director, which is what my role is, I hate when I have one idea presented to me and it's a bad idea because there's nowhere to go with a singular bad idea. What I love is when I have 2, 3, 4 ideas. I'm talking about with the same ingredients. It takes away from this idea of like you're creating a masterpiece, which is BS because it's food and everybody has done every combination known to man. So it takes that of pressure away and it allows them to be like, I love the idea of this ingredient and that ingredient, but the other one makes it kind of boring. Like your 4th idea had this ingredient, which I'm kind of surprised. What if we took that idea and brought it in here? That's my role. So um I like to have multiple ideas. I shape them and then I throw them back at them. So like recently we did a collab dinner with Vander Farms, which is a Wagyu producer in Michigan. So we're gonna do a tartare of some kind for the first course. And the original idea that we were talking about was using beets that were ground and dehydrated and chewy in with the meat and some citrus elements and something crunchy and savory and then rhubarb because we had just gotten like a batch of this hothouse rhubarb and that sounded a little weird. I was like, okay, maybe that's gonna work. And so we tried a couple versions and it did not work at all. So then I go to my drawing board and I'm like, take the rhubarb out, let's add this in, let's change this, let's try it again. And then what we do is we divide those things up, like the actual work of doing the dish. Sometimes I'll do a lot of it, sometimes a sous chef will do a lot of it, and sometimes we'll divide it up and have different people do different elements. But basically, I'm like cutting and pasting and reforming ideas and reshaping them. And sometimes even with the same ingredients. I remember there's a recent dish that we did, which is a sort of like raw shaved fennel salad with pistachio and stracciatella. Um, and it was presented to me, but it was like a soggy, like damp mess. And I was just like, this has got no life. It's like, it's not bright, it's not crunchy, it's not sweet. Like, what is wrong with this? I'm like, bring me all your ingredients. Like, I had our, like, let's do this again. And so it was in the hand, it was in the technique of like when to add the seasoning to the fennel, like how to break it down, like when, like what elements were working and what, and there's often a time when you have to just remove things, like that whole Coco Chanel thing of like look at yourself in the mirror and then take something off because you got too much stuff on. Like strip it down, make it more about the main event or the main flavor. So that's how a lot of dishes are created for the Lula menu.
I like that idea. Take something out. Lori said she got married in Florence, Italy in 1995.
I was
But
there.
okay. Um, but I don't remember the food at the market. Please tell me what
Not
I missed.
okay. I wasn't at the wedding. I was in Florence. I've had the play. I've been very lucky with my Italian experiences, and I'm leaving for there next week. So, um, I lived in Bologna for the year between regular college and graduate school. And for a period between my sophomore and junior year, I went to Italy and got in this apartment that looked out on the market. At the time, I was writing a novel. It wasn't about food. I was like, but I was first of all, I mean, I had enough money to get there, but then I was like, I didn't have any money, so I had to cook for myself. The market was it kind of like it foretold like what my life was going to be like later on. Like it started early in the morning, the trucks pulling up, and I would like open the shutters and see these guys like hauling in all this stuff. And like the markets in Italy just, are glorious centers of abundance and like unlike anything else. But the thing that I wanted to tell you, and I actually wrote a story about this that was in Bon Appetit a while back, is that what I didn't know as an American is like you don't go to a market in Italy and like start grabbing stuff. And in fact, the vendors at Green City get frustrated with folks here in the States for just like grabbing onto like, their tomato and squeeze, oh, I don't like this one, I'll throw this one back. Like what's happening to that tomato that you just bruised? It's getting thrown in the garbage now. You just ruined this person's chance to make some money off of that. But there you talk to the people behind who are working on the at the stand. And they ask you questions and they'll say like, well, what are you doing with this thing? And like, when are you serving it? Like, how are you serving it? And they'll pick it out for you because they know best. That is like the experience at the Italian markets that I most treasure. And man, there's something else. I just did a dinner in Campania and went to the fish market in Pompeii that just it blew my mind even after all this time. And I was there with Matthias Merges, who is Charlie Trotter's head chef for 14 years, picking out fish. And Matthias at Charlie Trotter's had the greatest product that could be flown in from anywhere in the world. And I just stood there and watched him pick up these fish that were just the freshest, most beautiful things that we'd ever seen. And him just be like, struck down in awe with how the quality of what he was looking at. And it was really reinforcing because you think like, oh, these are dying and the world is dying and there's no hope. But then you see these beautiful things. You're like, okay, there's still something to live for.
Did you even, this is again your friend Lori, did you ever visit the Maxwell Street Market a historic market in Chicago that in 1994 was relocated from its historic site and was not necessarily featuring produce, but farmers in Illinois, Indiana, and Wisconsin did sell their
They
produce there.
did, yeah. I mean, there were other markets where they sold produce too, but it wasn't great. And they were also I mean, I'm not throwing stones. I'm just also selling things that weren't from their farms um at those markets. So that was not, I mean, that was not a place that I went to buy fruits and vegetables. I did, speaking of Matthias Mergis and Charlie Trotters, I did have the experience of going to the main produce markets. My goodness, they were sort of um, like off of Roosevelt, maybe. I'm sort of forgetting where they were, but they were on the south side in the 90s, chasing down ingredients, trying to find interesting things. And it was fascinating because I looked up where Charlie Trotter bought some of his vegetables and some of the import stuff that he was getting from California. Um, and found a produce vendor called Cornell and Sons. And they let us, me and Leah, you know, not knowing what we were doing, they just let us go into these ancient walk-ins and these warehouses and dig in and just take take things and buy them by the pound when we were uh, just starting out. And like we were, at the time, like we were the only casual restaurant buying this stuff, if that makes sense. In the early aughts, there was Blackbird and 160 Blue and um, a couple other restaurants that were there that that were buying local or ingredients like we were, but they were all like super upscale, and we were a cafe that served breakfast, lunch, and dinner.
By the way, I've seen what you're talking about with people grabbing stuff and then throwing it back. And I've
Mhm.
stood there and go, why did you throw that back? And they can't explain it quite often. And I'll say, look, I'm going to buy it. I think it's going to be perfectly fine. It's this like I'm choosy, but you don't
Yeah,
do stuff like that to people's ingredients.
yeah. I mean, I understand like people have a desire to connect with what they're buying. And obviously like we're really used to like getting our hands on stuff and doing it ourselves. But there is the sense that there's this like unlimited, infinite resource that's just going to sort of keep regenerating. And that's like absolutely not the case.
Yeah, yeah. And I don't shuck my corn anymore. I just take it with faith and
Yep.
hope that it's
Yeah.
fine when I get home.
That's like life. Sometimes it's good and sometimes it's not.
That's very true. There was a couple, they said, we always ask farmers, market vendors, did you grow this?
Well, I mean, you can count on that at Green City and Logan Square. They do the work of that for you for sure.
I have to say, about 30 years ago, I did a volunteer effort at a farmer's market in Highland Park. And there was one vendor that was known not to have grown their stuff, and everything arrived wilted and it left even more wilted.
Yeah.
So people quickly understand whether it's good or not. Scott, I think we're time to wrap it up.
I don't want to. This is wonderful. Can please, sir, may I have some more? But and as they said in Oliver, remember that song, "Food, Glorious Food," or something
Yeah, of course.
more. But this has just been wonderful. Thank you
I
so
see a
much.
lot of people on here that I know, so thank you
Yeah,
for being here. Like I see Mike and Eric. I appreciate Deb. Thank you all for friends that showed up who've probably heard all these stories too many times.
can't repeat them enough. But thank you so much. And by the way, and I met you when you gave a cooking class at Tutori. That was your audition for the culinary historian. So you passed the audition very well. That's why
Oh
I
yeah,
invited you. Yeah, but
thanks.
thank you so much. And it's so good seeing you again.
Yeah, and please, anybody have any questions or need anything from me, you can I'm very easy to find. I can DM me or send me an email. It's just my name at lulacafe.com. You can find me easily. I have a website. It's jasonhammel.com. You can go there and find me. It's open and ready to answer any questions that or help anybody that I've gotten so much help from folks in Chicago myself, not being from here, that I'm, always ready to help. And also, I mean, look up Pilot Light. We're doing lots of great work. We've got an amazing gala every year. That's coming. I mean, a great list of chefs. And I think some people might find that stuff very fascinating.
Thank you again. And when I can nab a reservation, I'm going to be at your place. So you take care.
Great. Thank you all. And yeah, everyone have a great
There
night.
is a little question somebody just asked, and it's
What's
related to
that?
your foundation. Your nonprofit, any synergy with Alice Waters Edible Schoolyard?
Alice Waters Edible Schoolyard is different from Pilot Light in that I mean, it's using gardens and growing and cooking as the subject that it's teaching to like really focus on um issues around caring for the earth and sustainability and how to grow good food. And that's amazing. What we do is we use food to help teach kids. So there are a lot of kids out there that struggle in school. And we find that when you bring food in, kids light up and get engaged and really uh, learn in a new and different way. It's been very exciting. So yes, we've met with Alice. She knows about our program. She's seen it in action. And maybe someday we'll collaborate. The other person wrote, "This model has to be made sustainable. I'm from New Haven, HGS 66, which I assuming means Hopkins Grammar School 1966. And I also went to Hopkins Grammar School, and my stepfather taught there, and I even lived on campus. So I shout that out very much. Lastly, someone mentioned Lulu, which is we just opened this space around the corner. We do catering and events out of there, but we also are doing these really fascinating talks. So both in the food world and the music world, my wife's a musician. So we've invited various chefs and musicians and artists in to have conversations about the creative process and the things that they're thinking. The conversation I mentioned with Rick Bayless became a talk at Lulu. Like it's right around the corner. It's a little tiny space. And look out, follow that on Instagram. Look out for events there that you might be interested. Even this May 4th, we're hosting like a makers market of like local artisans that are doing interesting things over there. It's new things are happening all the time.
Well,
That's
again,
the
Great.
thank you.
creative process. Well, thank you very much.
Thank
Right,
you.
Scott?
Everyone have a great night.